So today the topic is unlock the sitting profits that are sitting in your business. And I've got a few notes here that I'll be referring to as we have this discussion today. So I'm going to focus on three key points here that I think have been the game changers for the businesses and the owners that I've worked with over the last 25 years. And the first we're going to start is that you have to believe that the profit is in your business to go looking for it. If you own a cafe, restaurant, bar, catering company, whatever food and beverage that you company that you have, and you don't believe that there is any way to generate a significant amount of profit from your business, and when I say significant amount, I'm talking about minimum double digits, so 10% plus. If you don't believe that that is there, and you don't believe that you can do things to create that type of profitability in your business, you are very unlikely to go ahead and do the hard work and the required work to extrapolate that double digit profit from your business. And in a way, you will just continue to prove yourself right in saying that this business that I own is not profitable or it can't be profitable. And, we're human beings. We tend to do that. We tend to make those decisions on what we believe and then manipulate everything around us to prove ourselves right. And in recruiting, we call that confirmation bias. Someone walks in the door and within 10 seconds, we make that decision on what they're like. And then we interview based on proving ourselves right. And that can happen here, this confirmation bias around what we believe. So if you do not believe that you can be a double digit net profit business, then you're unlikely to become one because, as I said, you just won't do the work required to become that business. So if that's you, then it will be a change of mindset that is required for you to move ahead and do the work that will produce these results. And from my experience, having coached hundreds and hundreds of businesses all across the globe over 25 years, 99% of hospitality businesses that I have worked with have got that double digit profit sitting there in their business. The problem has not been that the business couldn't be more profitable. It is the fact that the owners and therefore their managers have not implemented the right strategy. First of all, philosophy, then strategy, then approach, and implement it on a daily basis, the things that will produce that result. So the good news is, if you are not sitting in that double digit profit right now, the reality is that it's there. It's there for you. If you're at 5, 10 is there. If you're at 3, 10 is there. And if you're higher up, if you're already sitting at 7, 8, 9, and even double digit, for all of you, I'm sure there is more profit there in your business. But you have to do the work to achieve that. So first of all, you've got to get that mindset right, and you've got to go, hey, I have a good business here. I do have good turnover in my business. I do have loyalty. I have a great team, but I am yet to find out the recipe that will deliver these results. And really, that's the goal here. And hopefully, the reason why you've joined my Substack is because you are looking for answers. And, I'm going to give those to you. And answer number one is to get that mindset right. Believe that that profit is there in your business. The second point that I want to make is that the difference between the best performing businesses that I know or have worked with over the years or have observed as well all across the world in my travels is this understanding that to produce a high profit hospitality business, there is a need and a must desire here to implement what we call rigorous financial discipline, RFD. And rigorous financial discipline is not really the wheelhouse of most food and beverage owners. The majority of food and beverage owners come from that creative space, which is fantastic, and it's why we have across the globe so many amazing food and beverage businesses. But we have to underpin that creativity with rigor in all aspects of the business, but one that is crucial is this rigor around finance, this financial department or financial aspect of your business. To tell you a quick story, about a month ago, I had a call from a gentleman who oversaw multiple number of businesses. And he was calling me to ask some questions about my program. And as I always do when people reach out to me, I give them as much as I can. And I talked to him in that phone call. We were only on the call for about 45 minutes. And I talked to him, I asked him questions first about his business. And then once I learned a bit more about his business, what I could clearly hear is that he wasn't applying this rigorous financial discipline in his business. So he had the belief when I was talking to him on the phone and asking him questions that things just probably can't get any better. We're doing what we can and the results aren't coming through. We've got really high wages and we just don't seem to be getting the results. And as I asked him those questions and found out more about how the business was being run, it was clearly evident that there was not a focus on rigorous financial discipline. And I confronted him with that on the phone call. And I explained to him what he was doing. And then I explained to him, say, in the area of wage management, I explained to him what rigorous financial discipline looks like when it comes to wage management. And there was a significant gap between what he was doing currently and what my advice was on what RDF would look like. And just a couple of days ago, I had a lovely warm email from that same gentleman who who I'd spoken to, and he got off that phone call, got on him, and he implemented this rigorous financial discipline around wage management. And he has seen in the space of 1 month a reduction of his wages from 47%, which was astronomically high, down to 35%. So a 12% reduction in his wages by first addressing the fact that he wasn't applying rigorous financial discipline, and secondly is to put in the systems and processes for that make up rigorous financial discipline. And the simple thing that I taught him there, which I'd encourage you to think about as you think about the business, is, and I've talked about it before on a previous live training here, so go back and have a listen to that under my podcast section in Substack, is a focus on managing, reporting, and discussing and looking at wages on a daily basis. Wages cannot be a weekly analysis exercise. It needs to be done daily. And the analogy I use is that you do cash ups on a daily basis. You need to do wage management on a daily basis. And all he did was to implement that system into his business, and he's seen a major reduction in his wages. And that 12% improvement in his wages, if he is consistent over time, is straight to the bottom line. So just there's a 10% improvement in his net operating profit simply by implementing these, first of all, this rigorous financial discipline, and then the systems and processes behind that. So when you hear me say that every hospo business I have ever met has the potential to be so much more profitable than they are, it's because of these experiences that I've had with owners and managers. Although they're incredibly hardworking in the industry, and we have an industry full of hardworking people, that doesn't mean they're doing it right, and it doesn't mean that they're applying either the rigorous financial discipline or have put the systems in place to ensure these quite predictable results that can come from that. So it's really that goal here for you and your owners and managers is to ask the question, are we working smart or are we just working hard? And I would absolutely say that the owners and managers I meet are very hardworking people. But unfortunately, when it comes to working smart, there are some gaps there. And that's what rigorous financial discipline is all about. So number 2, applying rigorous financial discipline. The third one I want to talk about today is getting really clear on your target numbers. I'm going to be talking about this again in my next live session, but by way of introduction to that, it is incredibly important that you are clear about the numbers that you're targeting. I often tell the story when I work with clients around dart players. Now, I'm not a dart player myself, but we all know what the sport of darts is. And for most of us, we probably have an idea about how it works. And if you don't, well, the dart players start with a score of 501, and they've got to get to zero as fast as possible, as fewer shots as possible. And when the top dart players, when you see them play, one of the main things they're trying to do is to hit triple 20 on the dartboard, which is at the top and the middle, right up the top and in the middle section. And that there is triple 20 equals 60. And that is the highest number on the dartboard. So the fastest way of getting your numbers down is to hit triple 20. And you see it if you've seen it online or seen it on YouTube or whatever, they hit three darts, 20, 20, 20, which is 60, 60, 60. And then the commentator calls out, 180. And there's a whole, the crowd applauds. And what this is someone who is incredibly focused on what they're trying to do. They understand how to win. They understand what the targets are in that game, and they practice that all of the time. And what I see in hospitality when it comes to the numbers is that most owners I meet are just throwing the dart at the dartboard and hope that a high number comes out. And that's just not going to work. That is not financial leadership by the owners. And in the work that I do with hundreds and hundreds of managers each year, when I run my managers program, I see managers who are totally disconnected to the financial targets of the business. They wouldn't even know what they are, and they're being asked to improve wages and control costs around cost of goods. But there is no clear targets for the business. So, to the owners that are listening to this live session, you really need to get clarity on the key numbers in your business. And the biggest ones that I'd get you to focus on are the ones that really relate to operations, and that is your cost of goods and your what we call operational wage cost. And operational wage cost is non-management and administration wages. It is the rostered hours to do with running the restaurant, running the cafe, the kitchen, the front of house, those wages. And we call those operational wages. And those two numbers combined, I call that prime cost. So cost of goods plus operational wages is prime cost, and what's left over is your gross profit. And you have got to get crystal clear on the targets around cost of goods and wages. If you are not targeting like that dart player is on that dartboard, and you're just guessing your targets, or you are just hoping that you get a good number at the end of the month or at the end of the year, that is a total lack of focus on the numbers. And the result of that lack of focus is you and everyone in your team will lack focus on the numbers. So, my advice to you to really make sure that you identify that profit in your business is to get clear about the cost of goods and wage targets in your business. And as a guide, my advice to you is that on an annual basis, you want to be focusing on a cost of goods and wages combined, which is what we call prime cost, of no more than 60% of the total revenue for the year. Now, I talk about annual targets here as opposed to monthly targets, because as we know in the food and beverage industry, particularly around wages, we have changes to wage percentage based on demand, based on seasonality, and based on revenue. So we can't set a wage target every single month and say 35%, and every month is going to be 35. It doesn't work like that, because when you have your low seasons and your shoulder seasons, you might be at 38, but in your high seasons where you're generating the most revenue, you want to be at 26 or 27. But you want the average over 12 months to equal 35 if that's your annual target. And then with cost of goods, that should be more set. So if we use the example of, we use wages there at 35, cost of goods at 25, 25 plus 35 equals 60. With cost of goods, the target should be, in the case of this, what we call prime cost ratio, the target should be 25 because you need 35 for wages. And for cost of goods, I'd encourage you to put that as 25 for each month of the year, regardless of turnover. Now, for some of you hear that, you will think, well, that doesn't work. My P&L doesn't show that consistency. The question I would ask you is, are you stock taking? And if you are not stock taking, opening and closing stock on your food and beverage, you will never have a truly accurate cost of goods in your P&L. So if you're not stock taking, you need to implement a stock taking and a stock module into your business, and you need to be ensuring that both food and beverages stock take on a monthly basis. That will give you the accuracy, and that will help you when it comes to analyzing those numbers. So for the example we're using here, cost of goods at 25, wages at 35 for the year, and then divide that into the 12 months. Remember that wages will go up and down, and cost of goods more set at the set percentage of 25. And then we've got 12 months, key numbers for cost of goods target percentages, key targets for operational wage percentage, and we've built a financial plan. We have gone and focused on the critical numbers of the business. We have forecasted what those are. We've communicated those to our managers. And then we start to ask the questions, how do we achieve these goals? Because you've set some goals. And we all know in life that if we don't set some direction of goals, whether it be professionally or personally, the chances of achieving goals that we haven't set are very unlikely. And what I find when I meet owners is that because the financial aspects of their business aren't going well, they've just lost their ambition when it comes to their financial targets. Because they've had a hard few years, in the case of today, say post COVID period, or cost of living, increased food prices, inflation all across the world. I think for a lot of owners, they've lost their ambition around these financial targets. And I tell you, and I stress to you right now, you need to get that ambition back in your business. Because if you've lost that financial ambition, therefore you have not set any real targets, some gutsy, ballsy targets for the cost centers of your business, you will not only just meander along in terms of how the financial aspects of your business go, the business will totally underperform. And once a food and beverage business starts getting into that decline, it is a major challenge to get the business going in the right direction. Now, if you're already in that decline, then you're going to have to look in the mirror and say, that's it. I'm not accepting this 3 or 4 or 5% net operating profit. It is unacceptable. And you reassess and go, right, we're at 5%, we're going to target 10%. And then you're going to ask yourself the questions, how do we get there? Where do we do that? And hopefully today in this live session, I'm giving you some examples, because if you're sitting there at, say, 32% cost of goods, which is way too high, then you need to go and set some targets of 26 or 27%. So if we set 27 and you're at 32, the focus is a 5% reduction in your cost of goods, which will lead to a 5% improvement in your net operating profit. So reduce cost of goods by 5, and you will improve your profit from 5 to 10%. There is your double digit. And the point that I want to make there is the financial targets that you set for your business show that you have a strategy about what you're trying to do. And without those financial targets, without leadership, where you are crystal clear on what you're trying to do, you won't implement strategy. In fact, you won't even create strategy. And you'll just be a busy business that goes along hoping at the end of the month or end of the year that there's some money that spits out the bottom in terms of profitability. And it just can't work like that. The hospitality and food and beverage industry is too complex and too challenging to be guessing or hoping. It's too complex. It's too hard. So the more or the clearer you are and the more determined you are to set those numbers and then find out the answers of how to achieve those targets, the better that you will be. So that would be my third point, is get really, really clear on the critical numbers, set clear targets for the business. Achievable targets, not pie in the sky targets, achievable targets. I mean, the example I gave before is a reduction of cost of goods of 5%. I can tell you from all these years of coaching, a 5% reduction in cost of goods over a 12-month period is easier than you think. It's just that most business owners don't set the target of reducing their cost of goods by 5%. Then they don't implement the systems, the tools, and the culture around reducing cost of goods, and therefore it doesn't happen. So What I'm telling you right now, and really, really important for you to take away, is that there's a huge amount of hope when it comes to building a high profit food and beverage business. But it doesn't come from hope, it comes from action. I hope you leave more hopeful today, but more importantly, from this live session, I hope you are clear about the actions that you need to take. Now, you can learn a lot more about this through coming along to my live sessions. You can learn a lot more by reading through a lot of my Substack posts, a lot of posts there on finance. And you can get a lot more access to this information by learning more about my paid subscriber. We've got our founders, which is the yearly subscription, which gives you access to all of my sessions, all of the recordings, and a huge amount of resources. You've got the monthly subscription as well. So check that out on my Substack. I hope today, though, that this live session has been insightful for you, and I hope it's been encouraging for you. Please know that you have a much more profitable business than you think, even on your current turnover. And the job is to put in place the systems, put in place the strategy that will extrapolate that profitability that's sitting in your business. So thanks for joining me for this short but punchy live session, and keep an eye out for upcoming sessions. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Bye bye.